Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. There I was, sipping my morning coffee in my Cincinnati apartment, when the letter arrived that would change everything. "Miss Ivy Evans," the attorney's voice crackled through my phone. "You've inherited $5 million from an anonymous benefactor." I nearly choked on my coffee. After 15 years in the CIA, retirement had been pleasantly boring. "There must be some mistake," I said, running a hand through my brunette hair. "No mistake. The funds are being held at Morton and Associates. We need you to come in and sign some paperwork." That's when I noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Two men in dark suits sat inside watching my building. My old instincts kicked in immediately. I grabbed my binoculars from the drawer. Old habits die hard. The men weren't amateurs, but they weren't agency either. Their posture was too rigid, movements too predictable. I'd been followed enough times to know the difference. That evening, I took 3 different buses and doubled back twice before heading to the attorney's office. The paperwork was legitimate, but something felt off. The inheritance came with a single condition: I couldn't investigate the source. Walking home, I spotted another tale. Different men, same vibe. My peaceful retirement was officially over. I needed a distraction, somewhere public but not too exposed. That's when I saw it. Roll and Play Board Game Cafe. The cheerful storefront seemed out of place in my suddenly complicated life. Inside, the warm lighting and smell of coffee felt like stepping into another world. Behind the counter stood a tall blonde with striking blue eyes, her name tag reading Chloe. "First time here?" she asked, her smile reaching those ocean blue eyes. "That obvious, huh?" "We're starting a mystery game in 5 minutes. Perfect for newcomers. Interested?" I glanced out the window. No sign of my shadows. Why not? I could use a good mystery. Little did I know, I was walking into the biggest mystery of my life. And Chloe Flores, with her infectious laugh and strategic mind, would become more than just the owner of a board game cafe. As I settled at the gaming table, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The money comes with strings attached. Walk away now." I turned my phone face down, focusing instead on the game pieces before me. After years of international espionage, how dangerous could a board game be? The answer, as it turned out, was very dangerous indeed. But that's the thing about retired spies: we're terrible at walking away from trouble, especially when trouble comes with $5 million and a beautiful woman dealing the cards. "The murderer is in this room," Chloe announced, dealing cards with practiced grace. Her fingers brushed against mine as she passed my character card, sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. The game was called Shadow Manor, a murder mystery where players navigate a mansion full of secrets. Fitting, considering my current situation. Our table had 4 players: myself, Chloe, who joined to even out the numbers, and 2 regulars, a retired teacher and a college student. "Each of you has a secret," Chloe explained, her blue eyes twinkling. "The fun is figuring out who's hiding what." I almost laughed at the irony. If they only knew about the real secrets at this table. Throughout the game, I couldn't help but notice how Chloe's strategic mind worked. She picked up on subtle tells, remembered every detail, and manipulated the game flow with elegant precision. It was like watching a master operative at work, except her weapon of choice was cardboard and dice. "Former chess champion?" I asked during a break. "Games are my life," she replied, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "They're honest in their deception, you know. Everyone knows they're being played." Unlike real life, I thought, catching another glimpse of dark suits through the cafe window. As the evening progressed, our hands kept finding excuses to meet, reaching for the same game piece, passing cards, pointing to clues on the board. Each contact felt charged with something I hadn't experienced in years. "Your move," Chloe said softly, her knee accidentally brushing mine under the table. The touch lingered longer than necessary. I was so distracted I almost missed the man in the suit entering the cafe. He ordered nothing, scanned the room, then left. "Amateur move." "Everything okay?" Chloe asked, noticing my tension. "Just getting into character," I lied, forcing a smile. The game concluded with me solving the mystery, old habits again. As other players departed, Chloe started cleaning up the table. "You're good at this," she said. "Most first-timers don't pick up on the subtle clues." "I've had practice reading people." "I bet you have." Her gaze held mine a moment too long. "We have a tournament next weekend. Looking for a partner?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. "Final warning. Return the inheritance documents by midnight." "I'd love to," I heard myself say, despite every instinct screaming about maintaining a low profile. "But I should warn you, I'm probably not the safest person to be around right now." Chloe's smile turned mysterious. "Safe is overrated. Besides, I've got some experience with complicated situations myself." As I left the cafe that night, my mind was split between the growing threat around my inheritance and the lingering warmth where Chloe's hand had touched mine. Both were dangerous in their own ways. Walking home, I took an extra complicated route, thinking about blue eyes and board games, instead of the shadows following me. Sometimes the most dangerous moves in life aren't the ones that threaten your safety, but the ones that risk your heart. I had a feeling Chloe Flores was going to be both my best strategy and my biggest gamble. The question was, in this game of secrets and inheritance, could I afford to play both hands? The sound of breaking glass jolted me awake at 3 a.m. 15 years of training kicked in before my conscious mind could catch up. I was moving silently through my apartment, Glock in hand, before my eyes fully adjusted to the darkness. They'd finally made their move. Two shadows moved through my living room with professional precision. Not the same amateurs who'd been tailing me. These guys meant business. I could have taken them both, probably. But something held me back. The inheritance documents were hidden in a false bottom of my coffee maker, but these guys were tearing apart my bookshelf. They didn't know what they were looking for. I slipped out through my pre-planned escape route, a service corridor I'd mapped my first day here. Old habits save lives. Standing in the cold Cincinnati night in my pajamas, I realized I only had one place to go. The roll-lamp play cafe was dark, but the apartment above had a dim light. Chloe's apartment. I hesitated before ringing her bell. We'd only known each other for days, but something about her made me trust her. Maybe I was getting soft in retirement. "Ivy?" Chloe opened the door, her blonde hair messy from sleep. "What's wrong?" "Would you believe I'm here for a midnight gaming session?" Her eyes took in my bare feet, pajamas, and the small bag I'd grabbed. Understanding flickered across her face. "Come in. I have a spare room." Her apartment was cozy, filled with board games and books. It felt safe in a way my tactical mind couldn't quite explain. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" she asked, making tea. Before I could answer, lights swept across her windows. A black SUV was circling the block. "Down." I pulled her away from the window. We ended up pressed together behind her kitchen counter, her breath warm against my neck. "This isn't about overdue library books, is it?" she whispered. "Not exactly." I was acutely aware of how close we were, her hand gripping my arm. The lights passed. We stayed down, hearts racing. Then Chloe did something that surprised me more than any break-in could. She kissed me. It wasn't a dramatic kiss, just a soft press of lips, questioning and careful. But it sent electricity through my entire body. She pulled back, studying my face. "I've wanted to do that since you walked into my cafe." "It's not safe," I whispered. "I'm not safe." I noticed. "The way you case every room, check all exits. The gun you're trying to hide under your pajama top." I stiffened. "You're more observant than I gave you credit for. Games teach you to notice patterns." She smiled. "And you, Ivy Evans, are a very interesting pattern." That's when I saw the documents scattered on her coffee table. Financial records, surveillance photos. She'd been doing her own research. "You're not just a board game enthusiast, are you? Let's just say we might have more in common than you think." She stood, offering her hand. "Stay here tonight. We can compare notes in the morning." I took her hand, letting her pull me up. "This is a terrible idea." "The best strategies usually are." She kissed me again, longer this time. "Besides, whoever's after you will never think to look in a board game cafe." As I followed her to the spare room, I realized I'd stumbled into a game far more complex than I'd imagined. The inheritance, the break-in, and now Chloe, nothing was what it seemed. But for the first time since receiving that letter, I felt like I might have found a worthy partner for whatever game was being played, even if that partnership was starting to feel dangerously close to something more. Rain pounded against the windows of Chloe's apartment as I finally told my story. We sat on her couch, empty tea mugs between us, while thunder rolled across Cincinnati's skyline. CIA? Chloe's blue eyes widened. That explains the perfect posture. Former CIA, I corrected, watching her reaction carefully. Retired 3 years ago. Though lately it feels like the past isn't done with me. And the inheritance? I pulled out the documents from my emergency bag. $5 million from a ghost, no name, no trace, just enough breadcrumbs to make my old instincts scream. Lightning flashed, illuminating Chloe's face as she studied the papers. Her fingers traced the letterhead with surprising familiarity. This paper stock, she murmured. It's specific to certain European banks. I raised an eyebrow. Board game cafes teach you that too? She smiled mysteriously. Let's just say I had an interesting life before settling down with dice and cards. The storm intensified outside, matching the tension in the room. Chloe's knee pressed against mine as she leaned closer to examine the documents. There's something here, she said, holding one page up to the light. Watermark. Very subtle. I know that mark. My blood ran cold. It's connected to my last mission, a case that nearly got me killed. Thunder crashed as memories flooded back. Prague. A midnight exchange gone wrong. 3 agents dead, and a fortune in laundered money vanishing into the night. Someone's trying to pull you back in, Chloe said softly, her hand finding mine in the darkness. The question is why now? After 3 years of silence? She turned to face me, lightning reflecting in her eyes. Maybe that's what we need to figure out. We? I squeezed her hand. This isn't your fight, Chloe. It became my fight when you walked into my cafe. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. Besides, I'm better at this game than you think. The power flickered, plunging us into momentary darkness. When it returned, Chloe was inches away. Tell me about Prague, she whispered. So I did. I told her everything, the mission, the betrayal, the 3 bodies I still see in my nightmares. She listened without judgment, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. The money was never recovered, I finished. $5 million, same amount as my mysterious inheritance. Not a coincidence. Nothing in this business is. I studied her face. You're taking this remarkably well. Chloe's smile held secrets of her own. Maybe I understand more than you realize. She reached for her laptop, pulling up files that no civilian should have access to. Banking records, classified reports, surveillance photos. How did you... Remember when I said I had an interesting life? She turned the screen toward me. I used to work for Interpol's cybercrime division, specialized in following money trails. The pieces started falling into place. Her strategic mind, her attention to detail, the way she read people like game pieces. You're not just hiding from them, she said softly. You're hiding from yourself. From what you were. I caught her hand as she reached to close the laptop. And what about you? What are you hiding from? Instead of answering, she kissed me. Not like the careful kiss in the kitchen, but something deeper, more urgent. When we broke apart, the storm had moved closer. Maybe we're both tired of hiding, she whispered against my lips. Lightning illuminated the room again, and in that flash, I saw something in her eyes that mirrored my own past. The weight of secrets, the longing for truth, the need for connection. The inheritance wasn't just money anymore. It was a door back into a world I'd left behind, but this time, I wasn't facing it alone. So, Chloe said, intertwining her fingers with mine, want to play another round of Shadow Manor? This time with real stakes? Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, with Chloe's warmth beside me, I felt ready to face whatever game fate had dealt us. Sometimes the most dangerous missions start with a simple roll of the dice. The burner phone buzzed at dawn, displaying a message that made my stomach drop. Surrender the inheritance by noon, or we expose everything. Chloe stirred beside me on the couch where we'd fallen asleep researching. Her laptop still showed banking records from Prague. Bad news? She asked, noting my expression. Before I could answer, her security system pinged. Someone was in the stairwell leading to her apartment. Expecting company? I whispered, already moving toward my gun. She shook her head, pulling up the security feed on her phone. 2 men in suits were picking her lock with professional efficiency. Back door, I mouthed, but Chloe was already moving. We slipped out through her kitchen exit just as the front door clicked open. The morning air was crisp as we hurried down the fire escape. Chloe's hand found mine, steady and sure, as we navigated the narrow steps. "The cafe," she whispered. "I have a panic room." "A board game cafe with a panic room?" "I like to be prepared." We made it to the cafe's back entrance just as shouts erupted above. They'd discovered our escape. Inside, Chloe led me through the storage room, past towers of board games. She pulled a specific box, medieval strategy, and a hidden door clicked open. The panic room was small but well equipped. Monitors showed security feeds, including the men now searching the cafe. "They're not just after the money," I said, watching them methodically sweep the space. "They're too professional. Look at their gear." Chloe pointed to one screen. "That's government issue." "Damn." I ran a hand through my hair. "This goes higher than we thought." She turned to me, her blue eyes intense. "What aren't you telling me?" "That mission in Prague. We weren't just tracking money. We found evidence of corruption inside the agency. High-level officials taking bribes, selling secrets. And now they're afraid you'll expose them. The inheritance is bait. They're trying to link me to the missing money, discredit me before I can talk." Chloe's hand found my cheek, turning my face toward hers. "You're not alone in this anymore." The moment shattered as heavy footsteps approached our hiding spot. We held our breath, pressed together in the darkness. The steps paused right outside. Something scraped against the wall. "They know," Chloe whispered. I pulled her closer, feeling her heart race against mine. "I'm sorry I dragged you into this." "I dragged myself in." She smiled despite the danger. "Best decision I've made in years." The walls shuddered as they began testing for hollow spots. We had minutes, maybe less. "There's another way out," Chloe said. "Through the basement, but once we leave, we can't come back. Your whole life is here. My life needs some excitement." She kissed me quickly. "Besides, I've got my best games memorized." A crack appeared in the wall. Time was up. Chloe pulled a lever, and the floor beneath us opened to reveal a ladder. As we descended into the darkness, I heard them breach the panic room above. "Where does this lead?" I whispered. "Old Prohibition tunnels. They run under half of Cincinnati." We emerged 2 blocks away, in an abandoned warehouse. Through the dusty windows, we could see police cars surrounding the cafe. "They're burning my cover," I realized, making me look like a fugitive. Chloe squeezed my hand. "Then let's give them a real chase." Looking at her determined face, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Prague: hope. Whatever game these shadows were playing, they hadn't counted on me finding a partner. "You know this means you can never go back to your normal life," I warned. She laughed softly. "Normal is overrated. Now, want to show me how a CIA agent plays hide and seek?" Above us, sirens wailed across Cincinnati. The game was changing, the stakes rising. But for the first time since receiving that inheritance, I felt ready to play. Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards. And looking at Chloe's brave smile, I knew this was a gamble worth taking. "Agent Evans." The voice from my past cut through the dim light of our motel room. "Still running from shadows?" Marcus Chen, my former CIA handler, stood in the doorway. I had my gun trained on his chest before he finished speaking. "How did you find us?" "Please." He smiled, hands raised. "I taught you everything about disappearing, including that trick with the motel registries." Chloe emerged from the bathroom, her blonde hair damp from the shower. She assessed the situation with remarkable calm. "Friend of yours?" she asked, positioning herself strategically near the window. "Former handler," I replied, not lowering my weapon. "The question is whether he's still a friend." Marcus closed the door carefully. "You've got half the agency looking for you. The other half is pretending not to notice. That inheritance was a masterpiece of manipulation." "Explain," I demanded. "The money's real, the trap is real, but the players." He shook his head. "You're being played by both sides." Thunder rolled outside, echoing the tension in the room. Chloe moved closer to me, her presence steadying. "The Prague operation," Marcus continued. "It wasn't just about money laundering. Those files you found, they went all the way to the director's office. And now they're using the inheritance to flush me out. Or to protect you." Marcus pulled out a phone. This came through secure channels, watch. The video showed a meeting in Prague, dated 3 days before my inheritance letter. I recognized 2 faces, both senior CIA officials who died mysteriously last year. The money was insurance, Marcus explained. They knew they were marked for death. This inheritance, it's their failsafe. Chloe spoke up. The documents have a digital watermark, banking codes. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You found a smart one. Smarter than you know. I finally lowered my gun. Why help us? Because in 12 hours, they're going to release evidence framing you for those officials' deaths. The inheritance will be their proof. Rain began pelting the windows as the implications sank in. Chloe's hand found mine in the darkness. We need to move, she said softly. There's a safe house, Marcus offered. Off the books, even I'm not supposed to know about it. I studied my old handler's face, searching for deceit. Why should we trust you? Because I trained you too well. If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Chloe squeezed my hand. He's telling the truth. I turned to her surprised. How can you be sure? Interpol had a file on him, one of the good ones. Marcus actually laughed. Definitely a smart one. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, we spotted 2 familiar suits approaching the motel. Time's up, Marcus said. Choose now. Chloe pressed against me in the darkness, her warmth a reminder of everything at stake. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I looked at her, this woman who'd turned my world upside down in the best possible way. In the dim light, her blue eyes held nothing but trust. The safe house, I decided. But we do this our way. Marcus tossed me a key. 2nd floor, west-facing. I'll delay them. As we slipped out the back, I heard him greeting the agents loudly, playing the bumbling bureaucrat perfectly. In the rain, Chloe pulled me close. You okay? Instead of answering, I kissed her. Water soaked through our clothes, but I didn't care. For a moment there was only this, her lips, her touch, the promise of something worth fighting for. We should go, she whispered against my mouth. Yeah, I smiled. But first, this time, she kissed me, deep and certain, before we disappeared into the stormy Cincinnati night. The game had new players now, but with Chloe by my side, I finally felt ready to win. Sometimes the best strategies come from the heart. Marcus's safe house turned out to be a converted warehouse loft in Cincinnati's industrial district. As Chloe worked her magic on the encrypted laptop we'd found inside, I paced the space, connecting dots that had eluded me for years. Got something? She called out, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The inheritance money. It's the same accounts from Prague, just laundered through 7 different countries. I leaned over her shoulder, breathing in her familiar scent. They're not just framing me, they're creating a paper trail. Look at this. She pulled up a series of transactions. Every time the money moved, it triggered a small payment to this numbered account. Breadcrumbs, I muttered. They wanted us to follow this. But why? Why not just eliminate you? Before I could answer, her laptop pinged. A new email, encrypted with a key I recognized. That's impossible, I whispered. That's Director Sullivan's personal code. The dead director? Chloe's eyes widened. Can you open it? My hands shook slightly as I typed in the decryption sequence. The message was short. The game isn't over. Queen to E4. A chess reference? Chloe frowned. No. I felt the blood drain from my face. It's a reference to our last conversation, the night before Prague. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. I grabbed a paper map, marking locations rapidly. The money movements, I explained. They're not random. Plot them on a map. Chloe gasped as the pattern emerged. It's a chess game. Each transaction is a move. And we're the pieces being played. I studied the pattern. Queen to E4 means the next transfer will be here. She pointed to a location in Cincinnati. Tomorrow night. Rain tapped against the windows as we absorbed the implications. Chloe's hand found mine, grounding me in the present. Sullivan knew, I said softly. He knew they were coming for him. This whole inheritance scheme. It's his revenge play. Using you as his queen. Chloe's fingers intertwined with mine. But he didn't count on you having a partner. She pulled me closer, her blue eyes intense in the dim light. We can beat them at their own game. It's dangerous, I warned. If we're wrong. She silenced me with a kiss that made me forget about chess moves and conspiracies. When we broke apart, her smile held a hint of mischief. I've got some skills they don't know about, she whispered. Watch this. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, and suddenly we were inside the CIA's secure network. How did you... Remember those banking codes? They weren't just for show. She grinned. I may have done more than chase cybercriminals at Interpol. You're amazing, I breathed, watching her work. Save the compliments for when we win. A notification popped up. Someone was accessing Sullivan's old files. Right now. They're getting sloppy, Chloe murmured. Leaving digital fingerprints. Or they want us to see this. She turned to face me. Only one way to find out. We'll need help. I pulled out my phone. Marcus isn't the only one who owes me favors. And I've got some old Interpol contacts who'd love to crash this party. Outside, the city lights flickered like stars. Tomorrow, we'd make our move. But tonight? Chloe closed the laptop, drawing me away from the maps and plans. We should rest. Is that what you really want to do? I asked softly. Her answer was another kiss, deeper this time, full of promise and possibility. As we moved toward the bedroom, I realized something. Whatever game Sullivan had planned, he'd given me something unexpected. He'd led me to Chloe. In the darkness, with her body pressed against mine, the conspiracy seemed distant. Tomorrow would bring danger and revelations, but tonight belonged to us. Sometimes the best moves in life are the ones you never planned to make. The roll-and-play cafe looked different under tournament lights. Chloe had arranged an emergency regional championship, drawing players from across the Midwest. The perfect cover for what we were about to attempt. Cameras are in place, she whispered, adjusting my contestant badge. Marcus has his team positioned outside. I scanned the room, noting at least 3 undercover agents pretending to be board game enthusiasts. They were good, but their posture was too rigid for true gamers. Your move, I murmured, taking my seat at the featured table. The tournament's prize money had attracted attention, exactly as planned. Among the spectators, I spotted 2 faces from the CIA surveillance photos. Chloe took her position behind the counter, coordinating with our hidden allies through a disguised earpiece. She caught my eye, giving me a wink that made my heart skip. Welcome to the Roll-and-Play Regional Championship, she announced to the crowd. Today's featured game is Shadow Manor, a game of strategy and secrets. The irony wasn't lost on anyone involved in our real game. As the first round began, I noticed movement at the cafe's entrance. Right on schedule, a man in an expensive suit entered, carrying a briefcase. The money handler, right where Sullivan's chess move predicted he'd be. Knight to position. Marcus's voice crackled in my earpiece. I moved my game piece, simultaneously signaling our team. The handler took a seat at the coffee bar, exactly 3 meters from the hidden camera Chloe had installed. Package confirmed, she whispered through the comm. Starting data extraction. That's when everything went sideways. A new player entered, someone I recognized from Prague, someone who should have been dead. Abort, I hissed into my comm. We've got Ghost at the door. But Chloe was already moving, implementing our backup plan. She slipped into the storage room where we'd staged our emergency equipment. The Ghost spotted me just as I made my excuse to leave the game table. His hand moved toward his jacket. Ladies and gentlemen, Chloe's voice rang out. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please proceed calmly to the exits. The evacuation protocol we'd arranged with Marcus triggered smoothly. As players filed out, our undercover agents moved into position. I found Chloe in the storage room, already accessing the handler's briefcase data through a remote link. We've got 90 seconds, she said, fingers flying over her tablet. Company coming, I warned, hearing footsteps. She grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a shelf of board games. In the tight space, I could feel her heart racing. Trust me, she whispered. Always. She pulled me into a kiss just as the door opened. To anyone watching, we were just 2 people stealing a private moment. The footsteps paused, then retreated. Clear, Marcus's voice confirmed in our earpieces. Chloe pulled back, her eyes sparkling. Data's copied, time to disappear. We slipped out through the hidden tunnel entrance, emerging 2 blocks away as planned. Behind us, the cafe erupted in controlled chaos as Marcus's team discovered evidence we'd planted. "Think they bought it?" Chloe asked as we reached our getaway vehicle. "The ghost's appearance wasn't part of the plan," I admitted, starting the engine. "But it confirms our theory about Sullivan." She placed her hand on mine. "You okay? Seeing someone you thought was dead?" "I'm better than okay." I squeezed her hand. "I've got you." As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of her cafe in the rearview mirror. "I'm sorry about your business. Businesses can be rebuilt." She smiled. "Besides, I was getting bored with just regular board games. Regular board games don't usually involve fake tournaments and CIA ghosts. Their loss." She leaned over to kiss my cheek. "Now, want to tell me why seeing that ghost made you smile? Because now we know for sure, Sullivan isn't just leaving us a trail. He's alive." Chloe's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "The inheritance? The chess game? It's all been a setup to expose the real conspiracy." I turned onto the highway, and we just made our first winning move. Behind us, Cincinnati's skyline faded into the distance. Ahead lay answers, danger, and whatever future we could carve out together. Sometimes the best strategies require sacrificing your queen to win the game. But in this case, I'd found something worth far more than victory. I'd found a partner who made every risk worthwhile. The data from the handler's briefcase was a goldmine. In our temporary hideout, a lakeside cabin Marcus had arranged, Chloe and I pieced together the truth behind my inheritance. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "Every corrupt official Sullivan identified has a corresponding chess move in the money transfers." I leaned over her shoulder, breathing in her familiar scent. "And each move exposed another layer of the conspiracy. He's brilliant." She pulled up a complex diagram. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was a key to unlock everything. Sullivan knew they'd try to frame me. I paced the small cabin. "He counted on it. Because you were the only one he trusted to finish the game." The cabin's windows rattled as a storm rolled in off the lake. Chloe's laptop pinged with an incoming message. "It's from the ghost," she whispered. The message was simple. "Bishop takes knight. Check." "Another chess move?" Chloe frowned. "No." I felt my blood run cold. "It's a warning. Marcus is in danger." Before we could react, my burner phone buzzed. Marcus's voice was tense. "They found me, going dark. Trust no one but the queen." The line went dead. "We need to move," I said, already grabbing our go bags. "Wait." Chloe's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Let me trace the ghost's message. There's no time. Trust me." She looked up, her blue eyes intense. "This is what I do." 5 minutes later, she had a location. An abandoned warehouse near the river, because apparently all conspiracies lead to abandoned warehouses. "It's too easy," I warned. "Of course it is." She closed her laptop. "That's why we're not going in blind." She pulled out her phone, sending a series of coded messages. "Remember those Interpol contacts I mentioned?" Within an hour, we had satellite imagery, thermal scans, and building schematics. Chloe's former colleagues came through beautifully. "They're holding Marcus here." She pointed to a heat signature. "But look at these power readings." "They're running servers," I realized. "This isn't just a holding site, it's their command center." Thunder crashed outside as we planned our approach. In the dim light, Chloe looked fierce and beautiful. "You know this is probably a trap," I said softly. She smiled, pulling me close. "The best games always are." Her kiss was electric, charged with the energy of the coming storm. When we broke apart, her eyes held a dangerous gleam. "Besides," she whispered, "I've got something they don't expect." She opened a hidden compartment in her laptop case, revealing a small device I recognized from my CIA days. "How did you—" Let's just say Interpol's cybercrime division had some interesting toys. The device would let us access their servers remotely, copying everything before they could wipe it. "You're incredible," I breathed. "Save the compliments for when we win." But she kissed me again, softer this time. As we geared up for the rescue, I watched her check her equipment with practiced ease. The board game cafe owner was gone, replaced by someone who reminded me of myself, a warrior in disguise. "Ready?" she asked, slipping a knife into her boot. "With you?" "Always." We moved through the storm, two shadows among many. The warehouse loomed ahead, its windows reflecting lightning like camera flashes. Inside, Marcus waited. So did answers about Sullivan, the inheritance, and the conspiracy that had brought Chloe into my life. Sometimes the most dangerous moves are the ones that expose your true self. But looking at Chloe, I knew I'd found someone who loved both sides of me. The retired spy and the woman who'd walked into her cafe looking for a distraction. The game was reaching its climax. And this time, we were playing for keeps. The warehouse security was a joke, deliberately so. They wanted us inside, just like every move in this elaborate chess game had been calculated. "Too easy," I whispered to Chloe as we slipped past the first checkpoint. She squeezed my hand. "That's why we're not playing their game." We'd spent hours studying board game strategies, particularly chess. Not for the obvious reasons, but because Sullivan had taught me something crucial. Sometimes the best move is the one your opponent never sees coming. Marcus was being held in a central office, visible through glass walls. Classic intimidation setup. Two guards, professionally positioned, but their stance was wrong for CIA operatives. "Private contractors," Chloe murmured. "Expensive ones." "How can you tell?" "The way they hold their weapons. European training." I smiled in the darkness. Every time I thought I knew all her secrets, she surprised me again. Our plan was simple: appear to fall into their trap while Chloe's device copied their servers. But simple plans rarely survive first contact with the enemy. "Welcome back, Agent Evans." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Lights blazed on, revealing Marcus tied to a chair, and standing behind him, Director Sullivan himself. "You're looking pretty good for a dead man," I said, keeping my gun steady. "Death has its advantages," he smiled, "as does having the right queen on the board." Chloe stepped forward, her device already working. "The game's over, Director." "Is it?" He gestured, and screens lit up around us. "Or is it just beginning?" The screens showed surveillance footage, years of it. Every corrupt deal, every dirty secret, every player in their conspiracy. "You recorded everything," I realized. "Insurance." Sullivan nodded. "But I needed someone they'd underestimate to access it, someone they thought they could control." "Me," I said. "The inheritance was just bait. The money was real, your role was real, but the game," he smiled, "the game was always bigger." That's when Chloe made her move. While everyone watched us, she'd positioned herself perfectly. "Server access complete," she announced. "Copy confirmed." Sullivan's smile faltered. This wasn't part of his game. "Check," I said softly. The guards moved, but we were ready. Years of training kicked in as Chloe and I worked in perfect sync. 2 minutes of controlled chaos, and the guards were down. "You've learned new tricks," Sullivan observed as I freed Marcus. "Board games teach you a lot about strategy," Chloe replied, her device still copying data. Marcus rubbed his wrists. "The evidence?" "Uploading to every major intelligence agency right now," Chloe confirmed. "Too many copies to bury." Sullivan laughed, actually laughed. "Perfect. Exactly as planned." "Liar," I said. "You never planned on Chloe." "No," he admitted. "She was your wild card, the queen I never saw coming." Sirens wailed in the distance. Right on schedule, Chloe's Interpol contacts were moving in. "You'll have to kill us," I said to Sullivan. "To keep this quiet." "Kill you." He looked genuinely surprised. "My dear, I'm about to die again." This time very publicly, after exposing a massive conspiracy. "And you too. You'll be the heroes who uncovered it all." Understanding dawned. His final move, martyrdom that would make the evidence impossible to ignore. "You manipulative bastard," Marcus said admiringly. "I learned from the best." Sullivan smiled at me. "Now go. Your part in this game is done." As we left, Chloe's hand found mine. Behind us, Sullivan waited for the authorities, his final sacrifice ready to play out. "Think he planned all of this?" she asked as we disappeared into the night. I pulled her close, kissing her under the fading storm clouds. "He planned the game. But you and me? That was pure luck." "I don't believe in luck." She smiled against my lips. I believe in making your own moves. Sirens screamed closer as we made our escape. The game was ending, but something better was just beginning. Sometimes the best victories aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that surprise you with their perfection. 3 months after Sullivan's very public death and the exposure of the conspiracy, I stood in front of the newly renovated Roll and Play Cafe. The morning sun caught the fresh paint, making the whole building glow. "Ready for the grand reopening?" Chloe asked, sliding her hand into mine. The inheritance money, now legally cleared, had transformed the space. Modern gaming tables, state-of-the-art security, and a new apartment upstairs big enough for 2. "Still can't believe you wanted to rebuild here," I said, watching early morning light dance across her blonde hair. "This is where our story began." She smiled. "Besides, Cincinnati needs a good board game cafe." The bell chimed as Marcus entered, carrying a package. "Special delivery from our mutual friend." Inside was a chess set, handcrafted, expensive. The note read simply, "Every queen needs her crown. S. Think he's really gone this time?" Chloe asked, running her fingers over the pieces. "Does it matter?" I pulled her close. "His game is over. This is ours now." The cafe filled quickly for the reopening. Regular customers mixed with undercover agents, both ours and Sullivan's old guard, all watching over their own investments. "Ms. Evans?" A young woman approached our table. "Could you teach me that strategy you used last week?" I smiled, remembering how I'd once thought retirement would be boring. Now my days were filled with teaching game theory to a mix of civilians and carefully screened operatives. Turns out board games make excellent covers for training sessions. Chloe handled the business side, her Interpol skills perfect for spotting potential security risks. Together we'd built something unique, a safe haven for both gamers and agents seeking quiet retirement. That evening, as the last customers left, I found her in the storage room, our storage room, where we'd shared our first kiss. "I have something for you," I said softly. She turned, blue eyes curious. I dropped to one knee, opening a small box. "I know it's fast," I started. "Yes," she interrupted. "I haven't asked yet." "Don't care." She pulled me up, kissing me deeply. "The answer's yes." Later, on the rooftop garden we'd built, we played chess under the stars. The ring caught the moonlight as she moved her queen. "Think Sullivan knew?" she asked. "About us?" "He was good at predicting moves." I captured her bishop. "But I don't think even he saw this coming." Speaking of surprises, she reached into her pocket, pulling out an envelope. "Our honeymoon's been arranged, courtesy of certain grateful intelligence agencies." Inside were tickets to Prague. Because sometimes the best way to face your past is with someone who makes you believe in the future. "Ready for a new game?" she asked, her smile promising adventure. I leaned across the board to kiss her. "With you? Always." Below us, Cincinnati sparkled like a game board coming to life. We'd found our perfect strategy, a combination of her brilliance and my experience, of danger and safety, of past and future. Sometimes the best endings aren't about winning or losing. They're about finding someone who makes every game worth playing. And as Chloe's hand found mine under the stars, I knew this was just our first move in a lifetime of adventures together. "Check and mate,"